good, man. All good.
Thanks, mate. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another week of music, and we're here with the podcast with Adam Young from Howlers. Morning, mate. How you doing? Oh, have we
How
lost
you
you?
doing, mate? I'm good. I'm good. I'm surviving the heat. Surviving the heat.
Yeah, you made it through. You made it through then.
Yeah,
Yes.
like I'm not actually at my flat at the moment, but our flat where we live is actually quite cool, so it's
Yeah.
not been too bad. And everyone's been sweating and sweltering outside. We've been quite yeah, good temperature inside.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So we made it through the apocalypse. We're on the other side. It's raining again here in Manchester today. And what better weather to be heading towards tram lines for me this weekend? And I know you've got a few things on with the band this weekend too. But I kind of wanted to start because when I've been checking on the band socials and that kind of stuff, I can't find much information about you guys personally.
Mm.
And I see that as a bit of a benefit, really. I'd like to get to know you, and you can talk about the lads you'd like to discuss with them shortly as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so talk me through, how did you grow up as a young lad before you got into music and that kind of stuff? Tell us a little bit of history about you.
Well, as a boy, so to speak, I'm still a young lad now, really.
Yeah.
But we kind of like I wasn't really into music that much. It was always there, but I was kind of like pushed into sport, and I played sport at quite high levels. And I come from quite a sporty family, so it was kind of like all the way through like my teens and things like that. Like I really didn't pay attention to music other than the obligatory downloading illegal stuff after school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and you know, where I grew up, Portsmouth, which is where I live now, it's a real working class city. Like a lot of my friends from the north who I've kind of gone like, fuck, this is a shithole. It's, you know, it's a rough place to grow up, and it's a tough place to sort of carve your own identity out in. It's changed a lot now. It's like, you know, there's a lot going for it now, but in terms of like the city that I grew up in, yeah, it was a hard place filling that.
Yeah.
Skinny jeans and Chelsea boots, and
Sure. So hard in
it was
what
a
way?
rough start, really.
Hard in what way?
The people reminded, everyone's so working class, but it's like almost to our detriment. There's a saying in Portsmouth called "Portsmouth born and bred, strong in arm, thick in head," and it you know, it resonates quite true with the city. Like, you know, if I walk down the street now, I'll get heckled for having long hair for no reason, and you're just kind of like, what? How is that like affecting your day, mate? So to all my friends around here and everyone that I grew up with, when we were carving our identities, you know, getting our scooters and becoming a bit of a mod and things like that, going to the soul clubs and stuff instead of going to the nightclub strips, it was tough. It was tough, like when we were like 16, 17, 18. But we're much better for it now because everyone's so much more interesting than, say, you know, I'm sure my brother won't mind me saying that his group of friends, which are very much, you know, carbon copies of each other. So yeah, but like I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like, growing up around here kind of helped me become a little bit more thick-skinned, and so when I eventually wanted to go into music and got pushed into music that way, it kind of helped a little bit to sort of push through some of the flack that you can get quite early on.
So did you think it's helped your resilience in life then? Just like, because you got, if you're heading off into the big old music industry, the hardest industry in the world, you kind of need a bit of resilience to.
Yeah, like definitely, like, you know, at first it was kind of like you go into the music industry, everyone does, like bushy eyed and
Yeah.
all that, and bright eyed, bushy tailed, whatever it is, and then you very quickly get shot down because you think the world's your oyster, and it just isn't. So it's definitely helped us, kind of like helped me kind of, you know, pass on that experience to the boys as well, and kind of say to them, you know, this is not very dissimilar to how I grew up. If, you know, you keep pushing through, then it'll be all right in the end. But that being said, around here, like for music as well, the scene sort of died when I was about 16, 17. All the up and coming bands around here kind of just called it a day, or people didn't want to really go for it. It was kind of a weird time. There was a few bands around here that were kind of like making waves. You know, labels were starting to interest, like radio was paying interest to them, and then they just sort of went, that's it. So yeah, it's yeah, I don't know, like I've got a bit of a thick skin about it now. So when in our industry, I'm kind of like, if we, not that we ever really get slated, because we don't really, but like, which is, you know, quite nice, but if we ever did, or like someone's written something before that, I'm kind of like, that's not really nice, or whatever, like I'm kind of like, let's brush it off, it's water for ducks back now.
Yeah. So growing up in Portsmouth, are you all from the same like part of Portsmouth or?
No. So we all met in London for uni. So I actually lived in Manchester
Okay.
as well for a bit. So I left home at like 17, lived out for a bit, like worked, ended up moving to Manchester, then moving to London, going to uni in London, and sort of I met Gus. We were on the same course, and we sort of fannied around, like trying to.
Oh.
Like hung around with a few drummers, and then eventually met Tom, and touched back in with Tom this year, and kind of got going again, because we had to get a new drummer this year, so it kind of went full circle, really.
Yeah. The line dropped a little bit there when you said fannying about. I love that. I love that saying. What did you say straight after that?
Yeah, like just me and Gus, like we kind of like, yeah, we just met in London, and we were just, as I said, fanning about, and we tried out a few drummers, and you know, we've been through I think 2 now, and originally, like our drummer now, Tom, we touched base with him because we were friends around London when we wanted to start a band, and he was really busy at the time, but you know, as luck would have it, when we needed a new drummer this year, because you know, life gets in the way of, you know, things, Tom was out of a band at the time, so we kind of just touched base and hit the ground running, and I think like we went out for a quick half in the Hawley Arms in like late February, and then had a show in Manchester on like March 5th. So I think we did like 2 weeks worth of rehearsals and went out and did like a 10-song set. So it was it's been like a really quick learning curve for him, but it's been really enjoyable, because I think the band's a lot better off now since having him involved.
So how did you first start understanding that, you know, you can sing and you can play an instrument? How did like music like grab you, or how did you get involved with it first?
Well, I did that stereotypical thing that most kids do, like in this room, because this was my childhood room at my parents' house. You know, stand in front of the mirror and just, you know, think you're a rock star listening to music, you know what I mean, as a kid. And that was kind of like my little secret, like, because I was a sporty kid, so I'd come home and do that. And I kind of, as I said, my like exploration into music was quite late. One day, I can't remember what song I was singing along to, but my mum kind of said like, "Oh, like you can actually sing," and I kind of like paid no mind to it. And it wasn't until, you know, I taught myself guitar, because I'm, you know, I'm autistic and things like that, so I'm really unteachable. That I kind of found the knack for it, and found the enjoyment, and found what I was supposed to be doing. Because, you know, as much as I enjoyed sport, I kind of didn't really enjoy it, if that makes sense. Like, I had fun doing it, but like it wasn't me. And as soon as I picked up a guitar and started, you know, attempting to do things and play songs that I loved, something just clicked in me, really. So yeah, that was kind of where I got started. But ultimately, it was like being at college and going, yeah, like, you know, look at all these bands coming out of the music department, and look at all like the girls they're getting around them. You know what I mean? I want a piece of that.
Nice. So you mentioned there
Where it came from, really.
So you mentioned autism there. Just talk us through how that's helped or hindered you throughout your career. Has it been a thing you've had to fight, or has it been something that it's part of you, and you know you understand it more than what I do?
Yeah, like, so through most of my life, it was a hindrance, really, because I was undiagnosed until I was at uni. So all the way through my life, I kind of had this shadow over me where I was, you know, struggling to understand things, and you know, like I'm very, very slightly on the spectrum. It is a broad spectrum. I'm very slightly on it. Like, so it was more like, you know, in social situations, I was kind of like uncomfortable sometimes with things, even if it was a perfectly normal situation, but I didn't really understand it. And at school, my learning was, you know, so I have quite a high IQ at the same time as being on the autism spectrum, so it kind of hides it. So through like, primary school and things like that, and secondary school, I was able to sort of mask it and kind of be in like the top sets and things. But it was until I got to like higher learning, it became prominent that I was really struggling, and I really couldn't keep up at that point. And it took a long time for me to understand that my way of learning was not sitting down and doing exams and things like that. So when I got diagnosed at uni, it all kind of clicked. And so when it comes to music and social situations now, I kind of view it as a superpower, because it's something that I can use and harness and understand. And the people around me, both the team and the band, they understand it as well. But it's also like kind of like when we're performing, I get over like so nervous, like so nervous. I have to do this like little pre-gig ritual where I kind of like bang my chest like King Kong to get the adrenaline going.
Yeah.
And I walk out on stage and my legs are like jelly until I hit that first note, and that's like kind of like my trigger for being that character that I am on stage. That front man. That's kind of like how I disconnect it from myself. At the end of the day, I'm performing, so I've got to put in a performance. But until I play that first note, I've got sea legs, man.
Yeah, man. How did you get diagnosed then?
I was sat in a uni class one day, and my uni lecturer just turned around to me and just went, "Are you autistic?" And I went, "No." And he kind of went, "I think you are."
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh shit." And I was kind of like this thing. So he put me in for a test for a uni. And like I sat down, did all these tests and things like that, like, your cognitive ability and things. And they were like, "Yeah, you're slightly autistic. I can't believe it's gone undiagnosed for all these years." Because I'd been diagnosed like during my exam period at college with like dyslexia. Like before my last exam, they went, "Oh, you're dyslexic, by the way." I was like, brilliant. And that helped me out, didn't it? But yeah, it was, I think like there was always inklings there. I had friends over the years who were like a little bit older than me. And they were kind of like, they worked with kids who had, learning difficulties and things like that as well. So there was periods over my life where, unbeknownst to me, they were like testing me. And when I like finally said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm actually autistic," they were like, "Yeah, we knew you years ago." And they were like, "We watched you, you'd cut up a carrot for dinner, and we knew you were autistic." You know what I mean? So,
how did you cut a carrot up?
I feel I cut a carrot normally, man, but apparently it was just really, really symmetrical and like really methodical and logical.
Right. Okay.
And they kind of looked at how my brain works in a very logical way, and like it's not so much clean cut. It's more like I can see the path to something. You know what I mean? Like even like the boys know when we're packing the van for the tour, like there is a process, and they will literally just dump everything at my feet, and I will pack the van.
Like Tetris,
and if we're trying to struggle to get, like you know what I mean. Like Tetris was an amazing game, so that's probably where it comes from. It's like band Tetris, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like if we're trying to struggle to get everything in a car because the van's broken down or something like that, like even if it looks like we can't get it in, I will get everything in. So that's how I just view it as a superpower now. Like I'm really open talking about it, and open talking about it in our music as well.
Yeah. So how did it like manifest itself as being in a band? Is it always been Howlers, or have you been in bands before? Or
I've been in bands before. We were previously called something else before we called the Howlers, but the name was so awful.
I always like to ask the previous band names, mate.
Oh,
everybody squirms. Come on.
Right. So I'll give it a bit of story before.
Okay.
So me and Gus used to live right on the Westway in London, like on the motorway, right on, like literally right on the banks of it. It was so loud, but we were like about a 5-minute walk from Wormwood Scrubs prison, and I used to like work in the local pub where you'd have all the prison guards come in, and then you'd have like all the cons that had just been released that come in as well. So it was a weird atmosphere, and like I always would hear in the area the term being thrown around like, "Oh, scrubs, you're just a scrub," sort of thing. And it kind of like stuck like that. So we ended up calling ourselves Scrubs to begin with. And it was awful. It was rubbish. We changed that within like, I'd say, I don't know, 3 months. And then we moved to the Howlers.
There we go.
And we moved to like an area in London called Hoxton, and there was a bar just around the corner from where we were living called the Howl of the Moon. And it just so happened to be unbeknownst to us at the time, like where Arctic Monkeys filmed that video, Why Johnny Call Me When You're High.
Oh, okay.
And we were in there like discussing band names, like, and they do an in-house pint called Howl, and we were kind of like just drinking that. One of us went to the toilet and came back and was like, "There's a massive picture of Alex Turner at that sink in that bathroom above the sink," and we were like, that's from that video." And then we kind of like had already decided at that point we were going to call ourselves after the pub and call ourselves the Howlers. But it was kind of like a sign, like you walked into the bathroom and there's, you know, your Yorkshire legend stood above the sink. Like, it was kind of like a bit of a sign, really. But yeah, the first name's awful. I don't even like saying our name now. Probably not much better, to be honest.
Well, we always document the journey of a band, and I've mentioned it on this podcast. People will be like, he's going to say it, and I am. But the Arctic Monkeys supported my band, the first ever gig that they played in Sheffield. I always harp on about the story, and one thing I can remember from that gig is that they got everybody out of the room to sound check to make sure that their sound was right for that gig. And I still don't see that on a circuit, that level of thought and professionalism before going into the first ever gig. I still don't see that around these days. So it's just,
I think, yeah, it's a craft, isn't it? You've got to learn your craft. Like for us, because of how my brain works, we're usually at sound check early. So usually we sound check and no one else is in the room anyway. So we kind of way about how to do things. We actually played a gig in Sheffield, and when we played this gig,
can you remember?
The sound man came up to us in Sheffield and kind of went, "Yeah, you don't know how to play in this room." And it was like,
what venue was it? I might know him.
We were kind of like, you will know him. Like, it was Tufty from
but good friends with him. Hopefully seeing him this evening.
He come down from the sound desk, walked into the middle of the room and went, "Yeah, you don't know how to play in this room." And we were just like, no, like, but we were still like a young fledgling band. We had a lot to learn. And even now when we play with bands and like bands support us and they, you know, we get things and they go like, "Oh man, that sounds so good," etc. Like, you know, we watch everyone sound check, or we try to, and I just say, like, if you did that one little thing different, like, you'd feel like so much more comfortable on stage. Because I think most bands get this sort of like sound check fright, and they kind of go in and go, "Oh, get out of the way," and they feel like they're bothering people. Because that's how we felt when we first did it. So I think like what they did when you played with them, you don't really see that these days. But I think that's a social thing as well. Like, people are too scared to say what they want, I think, really.
Did that advice help from Tufty?
Did it help? I think in some small way, probably, like, because now we understand like the sound dynamics of different venues, and trust in the sound man a lot is what we do. So we kind of like, we don't really take a crew on tour with us, or a soundie, because there's no better person than the in-house to know their venue. If that makes sense. So I guess in some way, like now, like we've played some big venues. We're playing a couple of main stages of festivals, and we've also played some small venues. And sometimes the smaller ones are more enjoyable, but the sound is harder to get right. So especially when you've got like a back line like we've got, where I've got a stack of amps and Gus has got a huge bass stack. Like, you've got to be very, very tactical to make it sound good in every space. So I guess in some way, his comment at the time did actually help. But at the time, when I'm doing sound check, I was like, shit.
What, like, somebody's like, what's he saying this to me for? I'm just playing my guitar, or is it just like I'm not good enough? What did you mean by shit?
As in, like, what the fuck are we doing wrong? Like, sort of thing.
Right.
Like, and I think, like, at the same time as well, when the guy who's in charge of your sound turns around and says, "Man, like, you need to turn this the fuck down," like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a bit of a shock to the system. But we were only like a fledgling band then. We were only starting out, so we had a lot to learn, and we learned really quickly, because we were only a band about 9 months before the pandemic. So, and we did like something like 52 shows in that time. So we learned really quickly.
Yeah.
So and then had to sit on our arse.
How did you find, just, playing your first few gigs, having these experiences, playing different venues, having issues with things, sound, getting it right. How did you as a band focus and, take it to the next level where you are now? What kind of steps did you put in place to break through those smaller venues and get more notice on a national level rather than
preparation, I guess. like we were walking into venues like completely unprepared, and your live sound's everything. So we were kind of like, in our first 9 months, I'd say we were notorious for something going wrong on stage, something breaking. Like, it was just every gig. And it was kind of like, some of the biggest gigs we played, like our drummer at the time, he went through like almost every drum skin during our set.
Yeah.
I was snapping strings left, right, and center, and didn't have another guitar that was similar or anything like that. So it was really difficult to continue the set. Microphones breaking, pedals breaking, things like that. So we learned to build our craft and prepare, and kind of like your performance is kind of your art. So, through those experiences is how you learn to deal with them. And during our last tour, the first 3 dates, I snapped a string every single night, about 3 songs in, and I had to finish the rest of the set with a subpar guitar. And it was difficult. It was really difficult, and like it kind of knocks your confidence. But in terms of like getting us like nationally recognized and things like that, like we're still doing that. We're still growing. Like our whole thing is that we're not afraid to look in the mirror and say we've got a long way to go, or like we're not good enough yet. Let's keep getting better. And that's one of the things that kind of sets us apart from most bands, is that we kind of, during the pandemic, we tore up everything that we were as a band, and we started again because we looked in the mirror and went, we're actually shit. Like, let's be better. And the first EP we did was kind of the benchmark for that. And then this next EP we've got coming is kind of the growth from that. And we're always trying to be better and always trying to grow. And I think that's really important for bands. Like, when we see bands that they kind of think they're superstars already, it's in some way you're kind of like, fair play, mate. Like, that's you've got the confidence, that's great, but you have to have the ability to back it up. And that's not too bad now for anyone, because music is subjective or anything like that. But I think for us getting recognised on a national level, it's always been harder, because we can't be pinned into any genre or sound like most or any bands or anything like that. So we've kind of had to graft our own scene and graft our own way. And I've lost my train of thought now. But like,
oh, you're okay, man.
I would say that. No, carry on.
I was just going to ask, how did you fix the problem of breaking your string every time? Did you have to start playing it different, or a different guitar, or
string?
What's that?
Yeah, I was like, so I've got like spare guitars now. I've got a spare guitar that I have on stage with me. So we're pretty good now. I'm pretty good. If I snap a string, I swap it out pretty quick. Yeah. I'm no Stevie Ray Vaughan, so I'm pretty sure everyone's seen that video where he snaps a string and like he just absolutely shreds. I'm no Stevie Ray, but like, yeah, kind of. I was snapping strings left, right, and centre, and then a guitarist from a support band lent me a guitar one night, and it was amazing. And I was like, this guitar's so sick to play. Like, it was really comfortable. And he was kind of like, yeah, it's because it's a higher gauge string. You're playing like basically like shoelaces, man. And I was just like, all right, yeah, kind of. And ever since I've changed gauge string, I haven't snapped one yet. So touch wood.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, haven't snapped one yet. So
just little things like that, learning on the way, though, isn't it? It's a long journey being in a band, and just whatever kind of. That's why I wanted to ask you the question, because I know bands will be watching this. And I watch bands all the time that break strings, and they're just stood in middle of the stage like, fuck it, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna have to carry on. I'm not happy, but it's a massive thing.
You kind of have to be aware of everything around you. Like, I've blown up amps on stage, and you have to deal with that and deal with it quickly. There was this one show we did where I remember literally walked on stage, crowds cheering and whatever, and then started the song, I went to play my first note, and it just went. It like kind of went like, and then kind of just died. I was like, what the fuck's happened there? And like, it was my guitar lead. So like the boys kind of had to loop this intro, and they looped it for about 3 minutes because I literally ran off stage, ran backstage, and I raided through the support band's gear for another lead. Didn't even ask him because I was on stage. I just literally raided through, found a lead, and whacked it in, and then carried on the song. And like my parents were there that night, and my mum said to me afterwards, she was like, I was kind of like praying. I was praying for you, because it was like this awkward moment where the boys, I just literally went on stage, went, wow, fuck, and then walked off stage. And there's been like, there's been like things where I've snapped guitar straps on stage, and our managers come on and have to like fix it, and all sorts, like pedals breaking. I've had to like quickly repatch pedal boards, and which I can't do now because my pedal board's ridiculous. It's like Mission Control. But like, now, like the first gig I ever did with this new pedal board was a live streamed gig for the Great Escape. We had like 10 minutes to set up. It was ridiculous. And like, there's 50 things that can go wrong on this board. Not because there's 50 pedals, but because I've got a switcher now that just makes my life easier, so I don't have to do the old pedal board two-step. And like, I plugged it in, and they're going like 5 minutes, 4 minutes, and I'm like, nice. What the fuck has gone wrong here? Like, I was just like, it's not working. And we quickly like found the problem and sorted it. But it's all about learning your craft, and every band's different. And it's kind of like, if you've got a certain sound, make sure that you've got at least 2 guitars that can replicate that sound. So if something goes wrong with one, you can quickly switch out. And that's what makes it fun. That people kind of think like, the audience will notice. They don't. They just think it's like really art pop now, man. Yeah. You know what I mean?
They really don't. They really don't. So tell us something about you that you think we'll be surprised about. So something that you might not have mentioned before, or something about you, or maybe some band members as well, if you're comfortable with that.
Oh, something about me. I'm not. I shouldn't say. About me. So if they're going, most lads when they get to 18, they go on to like Magaluf or Zante or something like that. I didn't do that. I went to Moscow and St. Petersburg, which was kind of like, as an 18-year-old, was weird and scary. We were originally supposed to go for like a Kasabian gig, but Kasabian cancelled. So like, we were kind of like stranded in Moscow and St. Petersburg. Like, what the fuck do we do? Drink vodka is the answer to that question. Yes. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of people could say about me, and they didn't know about me. Like, as a musician, like, I don't know scales. So as a guitarist, I don't know scales or anything like that. So I play things and I write songs, and I go to the people that we work with and the boys in the band, and they go, what chord's that? And they're kind of like, because I do it all by ear. So I know the basics now, obviously, but when it comes to like, if I've written a riff or something like that, I'm like, yeah, what chord would go under this? Like, luckily Gus does that kind of for me, and he goes, yeah, you're playing like a B sus 59 or some bullshit like that. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm kind of like a bit obtuse like that. So when I write, I do it all by ear and feeling. Obviously Gus is from the Netherlands, so that's something people don't really realise when they meet him, because he sounds northern. He sounds like he's from Sheffield or something. Okay. And that's because when he was a kid, he ran a unofficial Arctic Monkeys fan YouTube page, which then we turned into our YouTube page. Okay. So I had like 20,000 subscribers. We were like, having that. No, we're having that. But yeah, he kind of like, he posted loads of videos like you just like edit videos and post them as a kid. And there was videos that I remember I had watched that he like sort of stitched together before we even knew each other. But yeah, I get a lot. And Tom depth for Star Sailor every now and again, when they needed a drummer. So it's kind of like, we're a weirdly interesting bunch, I guess, and like weird things. I'm sure there's more I could mention, but offhand, I can't really think.
That's great. I love that question, because it just opens up loads of stuff. So what do you think? Where do you think the Howlers are now within the music industry? What kind of stage do you feel you're at now? and where's next?
We're still merging. Like we're still merging. Like we're not under no illusions who we are. Like we've got a bit of a word of mouth fan base. We've never ever had a like DSP support from like Spotify or anything like that. You know what I mean? So we've had like Apple Music support, but in terms of Spotify, they've never popped us in a playlist ever. Which is when we talk to people about it, they're like, "What? It doesn't make sense," because we've had so much on TV and radio and press and things like that. So it doesn't really click. So it's kind of stunted our career a little bit. So we're still merging and we're still having to graft. But it's going in the right direction. Like over the past year, like things like social media have changed so much. So in terms of promoting records and promoting, things that everyone does in the industry, it's a lot harder these days. But we've always built on word of mouth, and we've got a little loyal fan base of people dotted around the country that buy our records and pay my rent. So that's kind of where we are. But we're under no illusion that we've still got work to do.
Yeah, but what's the best thing about being in the Howlers?
That it pays my rent. I can actually do it as a job. I think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of bands.
The holy grail, being able to pay your rent out of music must be.
Yeah, like not a lot of bands can really say that.
Yeah.
We do really well with TV stuff, and soundtracking things, and like most bands don't really get that. And I was chatting to our publisher the other day, and they were kind of like, "We don't understand it, but whatever you're doing, don't stop doing it because you're making us money," sort of thing. Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a joy. And it's like we get to travel the country and see people, and travel Europe and see people and meet people that we would never normally meet, and have experiences that I'm sure most people wouldn't say are enjoyable. You know what I mean? We're slogging out in a tranny van, up and down the motorway is not exactly the most enjoyable experience. But when you get there and you meet the local like music buff, you know what I mean? The local guy that goes to every gig. That's kind of a nice experience. Like one of the first ever gigs we did in Bristol and in Plymouth, like the infamous Big Jeff from that area, like front and center. So, and I remember walking into this venue and everyone from that area, and our old drummer, he was kind of from that area. He was like, "That's Big Jeff." I was like, "Who the fuck is Big Jeff?" You know what I mean? Like I didn't know this guy was. And this was before he even got like, national fame through, the Idols fan group and stuff like that. So I just remember being in this venue and like the venue staff are taking pictures with him, and they're going like, "Oh, it's like, it's a sign of approval for our venue that Jeff's come to this gig." And I was like, who the fuck is this dude with an afro? Like, I don't get it. But yeah, he was such a lovely guy, and we had like a really good conversation. And he was like down the front, head banging the whole gig. And I was just like, this guy loves music. But there's one of them everywhere. John. John was like that in Manchester. Like, sadly he's not here anymore. So there's always people like that we get to meet, and I really enjoy it. Like when we talk to like our partners or girlfriends or whatever like that, and they go, "Oh yeah, you're probably talking to girls here and there in every city." Like, no, it's 6 music dads with beer bellies. Like, you know what I mean? They're the guys who are fancy. That's I've seen the boys take pictures of the people we're chatting to. It's like a bold 65-year-old wearing our t-shirt. It doesn't quite fit. We didn't quite do an extra large at the time. So that's kind of the enjoyable thing. But it's not everyone's cup of tea, obviously. But yeah, I love it. We've got to do it tomorrow. I've got to get up at 5 tomorrow to drive to a festival to play a couple of sets. So
yeah, man, love it. And what bands have you seen recently that have made you stop and think, shit, they're great? Like a similar kind of level to you guys, like you might be playing with at the minute, or you played with at a festival. Who's around you that's quite intimidating, that they're that good and they're just on the way up and you can just see them going massive?
You know what? Like, I love this question because I always have the same answer.
Yeah.
There's not, when we look at the music now, in my opinion, there's, this is my opinion, and sometimes the boys, there's not a lot of bands out there that we look at and go, "Fuck, you're really good." Not because we don't like them as a band, but because we kind of just think, you're doing the same thing, that post-punk thing. Like, where's your individuality and your identity? And so when it comes to artists, like they're few and far between for us. Like, there's a band from London/Brighton called Fur, which are really good. They're kind of like the Growlers. They're like, on their way. There's an artist from London he's playing with us on our London date in the tour called Phil Madley. And he's really good. He's got such a cool like blues sound. You've got Katie J from Bristol. Like, she's awesome. I went to we played a gig in Portsmouth the other week, and on the morning of the gig, she was doing an album launch in the local record store. So I just stumbled down there and watched her do acoustic set, and it was amazing, like mind blowing. So yeah, I always say when we get asked that question, like, "Is there any bands you recommend or anything like that?" Or you're like, I always think, if music is so much better and enjoyed if you discover it yourself, you're not told. You know what I mean? And you can't, because you kind of get that buzz. But I discover artists all the time, or the boys show me something, I'm like, wow, or they're playing something, I go, who's this? Like, Gus was playing something in the van the other day, an artist from America called Trey Burt, and it was a song called Know Your Demons, and it was just, I was like, wow, this is sick. But yeah, there's artists like, Curtis Hardin's another one that I absolutely love. He's been around a while now though, but but in terms of the emerging circuit, I'm not really that plugged into it, because I kind of think everyone's just kind of following the same mold. There's not really any individuality. So when we pick bands for our tour, or our agent picks bands for our tour, I kind of say to them, like, I want it to be different. I want it to be interesting, like, just have a bit something about them, like, yeah. I can't really put it better than that. That makes me sound like a proper grumpy git, but
No, man. What makes the Howlers unique then?
that we don't really sound like anyone.
Mm.
Like, and we've had that from major labels, and we've had that from everybody, and we get it from press and radio. They kind of go, don't really know how to put what category to put you in. Like, yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah,
like, we're doing our own thing. We kind of put our own stamp on it. There's bands that obviously we were influenced by, and we've taken little bits of their careers. Like, we work quite a lot with Black Honey, and I've always loved that band, and it's been amazing to sort of work them on new records and do it really DIY together, and learn things that way. But yeah, I think what makes us kind of unique is that we're actually, like, quite humble. I like, that outlawry leather-clad image that we have. That's the iconography, but actually as people, we're pretty down to earth, like, nice guys. Like, I'm actually quite a shy dude. Like, I'm autistic, so social situations scare the fuck out of me. But yeah, I think we're just nice people. Like, we've generally had people come up to us before and gone, like, that was actually really lovely or sweet what you did there. Like, because I'm notorious for giving away merch. Like, if someone just spends 5 minutes talking to me, and I get on with them, I'm like, oh, did you buy anything at the merch stand tonight? They're like, nah. And I'm just like, yeah, vinyl. And they're like, what? And then, like, someone else comes over and goes, Adam, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, we've got to sell them. And I'm just like, fuck it, it's my record. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
you've made a fan life there, though.
Yeah, we do. I do it all the time. And, like, we kind of, like, when we get a lot of vinyl orders. But we spend a lot of time making sure that we write a little message for everybody inside, like saying thank you, and make it personal, and maybe chuck in a few extras or something. We get people all the time that go like, oh, is this out of stock? And I kind of go, yeah, but hang on. And I've actually sold people or sent people, like, my own personal version of my band t-shirt. So I don't own any of my band t-shirts. Like, it was a couple of weeks ago, there was someone who came to us and was like, my daughter really loves your band, like, and I kind of said, she was like after a t-shirt, and I was like, I don't actually have any left, but I managed to, like, someone I knew had one, and I was like, are you wearing that t-shirt? Nice. And they were like, no. And I just went, well, I'm having it back then. And I gave him a tenner. And then, like, I sent it to this this woman for her daughter for nothing. And it's little things like that that kind of set us apart, I guess. Not financially viable, but we like building that relationship. Everyone's part of the family when they're in that room together, and we want people to feel like they can escape the world outside. So I want people to feel like they can come up to us at gig and go, hey.
It's ace. And you've got the new a single out at the minute, Nothing to Lose. Talk to us about this tune and what it's all about. And you mentioned earlier about COVID, and you kind of looked at yourself, thought, we can get better. Is this single like the first thing where you've thought, yeah, this is on another level from, like, before COVID?
Yeah. So, like, also we wrote the first EP during COVID, and then toured it, and played 2 songs from it on tour, because during that the interim period from its release to our tour, which was probably a couple of months, I was pushed into a lot of sessions by a lot of A&R people, like testing me out, finding my feet, I guess, as a songwriter, and they didn't all work out, but through that, I kind of, not even through A&R in any way, like I just stumbled into a friendship with the guys from Black Honey, and they kind of had a process in place of how I write, because they write very similar. And so just before our tour, I kind of got like a little bit inspired, and I was writing a new song every day, and every day they were getting like better and better. And I was kind of going like, shit, where did that song come from? And I was demoing them over Zoom, like we're doing now with the guys, like with Chris. And, you know, he was kind of pushing me to be better and challenging me to be better. And he'd sit there and go, that chorus just isn't quite cutting it. Like, go away and you know, you're 10 minutes, go write a new chorus. And I can't thank him enough for that, because it kind of unlocked this part of my brain where I was like, I can do this. Like, I can actually write a song. And so before the tour, these songs existed. I had like 30, 40 tracks that were just like, shit, what do we pick to put in the tour? And we played a couple of them. We played about 8 of the new songs. And then we went, shit, let's record this EP. And unfortunately, we had a drummer that, you know, had to leave the band in December, like shortly after our tour. It was just like, this is bad timing. And so we kind of went into this year with this big pile of songs and recorded them. And it's kind of like the first taste of what's to come, really. Like, we have like an album banked. This EP, there's a song on it called the title track, Further Down the Line. It's possibly the best song I've ever written, you know, in my opinion. It's the song that when we play it gets the loudest cheer, and it's not even a loud, big, aggressive song. It's like, it's just a tune. Like, it's not it. I found my feet as a songwriter, as a soul writer as well, and putting more soul into our music. And that was kind of brought out of me for the A&R sessions as well. Like, there was a guy, quite a big guy, he spent like 3.5 hours, 4 hours with us in rehearsals. He wanted to hear everything we'd ever written, which is unheard of for an A&R guy, let alone the head of A&R. And at the end, he was like, look, I'm going to be honest with you and stuff like this. And we were like, yeah, cool. And he was really complimentary and gave us lots of constructive criticism. And he turned around to us like, the problem is, you look how you sound. If you were all wearing bright pink jumpsuits, I'd sign you right now, because it's different. But it's borderline, it could be pastiche. And how do we work on that not being that way? And that's what we've been doing. And then he kind of turned around and went, you're more of a soul singer, so put right like that. You can do it. I know it's in there. Stop trying to push or force this. And that's how these songs came about. And like, so I can't thank all the input we've had enough. We still talk to these people, and we things like that. But yeah, from that, and it was a song that the riff didn't exist until I went to demo it. Everything else existed, and then I had the TV on in the background, and there was an advert where it was soundtracked by that Lenny Kravitz song, Are You Gonna Go My Way? Which is a banger, you know what I mean? And I kind of went, you know what, it'd be cool to do like a Lenny Kravitz style riff. So we kind of like joked about like Lenny Kravitz has now entered the chat, and we kind of like just like started doing this riff. And it came from that. So it was, you know, I'm super proud of this song. You know, the reaction yesterday was awesome.
Nice.
So, and because, you know, considering we're like an unsigned band, so to speak, like we do everything ourselves. We've got a big team around us. Yeah, I couldn't be more happy with how the songs turned out, and there's more to come. You know what I mean? So
yeah, sure.
I'm buzzing about it.
So the Nothing to Lose is out now. The EP comes out on the 30th of September. I'll put a pre-save link. Description is podcast for everybody. Produced by Black Honey as well. I know you mentioned them earlier in there. How was it working with them? Just lost you there.
You know what? It was awesome. You know, as I said, they challenged us and pushed us to be really good relationship. Like, it was a good experience because we built a friendship and a working relationship in tandem. So when we came to record it, like we just spent all our money at the time on buying a van. And they were like, right, let's go and record it. And I was like, shit, we ain't got any money, man. And they were helping us with lots of things. And they kind of went, well, tell you what, let's do it DIY in our rehearsal room. Yeah. And I was like, this could sound really bad. And no, we'll make it sound sick. I was like, okay, cool. So we end up going to their rehearsal room and recording it, like, you know, bringing everything with us, like the computer with like all the inputs and, you know, the DIs and stuff like that. And like we kept crashing the computer because we were running too much stuff through it. And we recorded it over 2 days, and then they were like, we're going to try and mix it before we go on like an 8-week. Like, they won't mind me saying, we all thought it sounded good, but it didn't. Like, we were kind of like, oh, this could be a bit better. So they went away for 8 weeks, and it was good for like the perspective coming back that they came back and they remixed it, and that's what it sounds like now. Wow. You know.
Oh, just lost you there.
They come a lot of shows, and am I back?
Yeah, you're back, mate. Sorry, go on.
Sweet. Yeah, like they went to.
Oh,
so they've been, you know, I've got off all of them really.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, man.
It's okay.
I think, I'm at my mum.
You're at your mum's house, and you mentioned earlier she's got a little bit of
yeah, I might have to shout at my mum. Yeah, I'm gonna have to shout her and be like, "Get off the phone" or something, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
okay, it's all good. So the tunes are out there. You know, the EP's coming out, and of course you've got a tour coming as well, all over the country. Leeds, Glasgow, Edinburgh. I'm just reading through. Gulliver's in Manchester. I put gigs on there, so I'm going to try and get down to the 3rd of September one. Come and see you, say hello. Sunflower Lounge in Birmingham. All these gigs coming up. The link to catch the Howlers is going to be in the description of this podcast and on YouTube and everything too. So how do you prepare for a tour going ahead? Make sure you've got a big batch of strings, you've got your spare guitar. Yeah. Is there anything else that you try and prepare for as well against things that break?
Have spares, just have spares readily available. Yeah. Like we take what we call the box of death on tour, and it's like pedals and leads and just bits of shit you don't think you need until you need it. Yeah. And a tape, a soldering iron. Soldering iron is unbelievably important. You know, the last tour we did, I blew my amp up on stage in Manchester. Next night, arrived at Birmingham and kind of like had to like take the back off my amp. Gus ran down to the local market in Birmingham, got a soldering iron and some soldering wire, and we were in soundcheck soldering my amp while, you know, things were going on. So it's kind of just being expecting all eventualities, but these are things that you learn as you go along. Yeah. And tape's a big one. Have a fuckload of tape. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because that comes in handy in all situations. But yeah, it's mainly like we just, when we rehearse, we kind of like get all the levels right, mark up all our amps and things like that. So, you know, when we go in, it's kind of, we've got the benchmark. But yeah, I think I kind of think that you can there is such thing as rehearsing too much. So we rehearse, we get tight. We're a tight band anyway, but like if there's a new tune we want to try, we make sure that's like tight, and we just make sure the set kind of flows and it's cool, man. But like, yeah, we do this like thing just before we pack for the first day. And it's like, have we got everything? And you double check, and then you go, no, I've fucking left this behind. But there's bound to be something on when you're touring that you're going to need or you run out of. At the moment, it's picks. I can't get picks for love or money. Picks that I use.
Is that Brexit?
And I've got a terrible habit. Yeah, and I've got I went into a guitar shop down here the other day to get some. Walked into a massive warehouse, and there's usually a big wall of guitars all hanging. The guy went, "What the fuck's happened there? Like, you been popular or something?" And he was like, "No, just can't get the orders." Like, and then I went, "Right, I come for picks anyway." And there was like no picks, and I've got like a terrible habit. So like, I might have on my pocket actually. I fray the end, so they go like all like fluffy, so they're not any good. So yeah, I've got a terrible. So I go through picks like no, and like I kind of put all my picks on top of my amp when we play, and then yeah, they just fucking go everywhere. Like after the gig, I can't find them. I'll put like 10 on there, and I'm like, where have they all gone, man? Like where did they all go? Yeah, there's always something, but it's kind of like thinking on your feet and being prepared, and just that's part of the fun, the danger, really.
So what can, just to leave people hanging a little bit, what could people expect to see on the live, the Howlers live, or are they not going to expect what's going to happen?
They can expect something that they've probably never experienced before, in terms of like how we present a show. Like not in terms of like, I'm not fucking wheeling in flamethrowers at cafe cannons, that's not happening, but like it's more the fact that when we play, we create a soundscape, an environment, space. It's more like a movie soundtrack than anything else. And so it's different. Like we're not a band that goes and plugs in and plays, take away and enjoy, or something different. And so yeah, like we play a lot of songs, but there's a few like stripped back ones, there's a few like slower ones, and just stuff people enjoy, really.
Well, guys, if you're listening to this podcast now and you're new to, and you're being introduced to the Howlers, take a look in the description of however you're divulging and getting involved with this podcast. There's a LinkedIn, a Tree Link page there where you can buy a ticket for the gigs, you can invest in the music, you can get involved with the band. I urge you to, because let's join the Howlers train, and just good luck with the tour, mate. Really appreciate your time today, joining us for this chat. Yeah, just really appreciate your time, mate. Thanks, Adam.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. Finally.
Cheers. Thank you.